Thank you for viewing. I'm losing my marriage to a man I genuinely love because of a joke I made with my spouse, 29. How can I make it better? A few minutes ago I made this account because I need advice. I'm losing the man I really love because of a joke I made that is getting out of hand. I've been married to my spouse for 4 years, and I adore him unconditionally. Without him, I can't imagine my life. Some of my pals persuaded me to try a practical joke they've pulled on their partners or husbands, informing them you want a divorce or split. Since I was the only one of the 5 of us who hadn't done it yet, they persisted. And bugging me even though I felt it was cruel and I never wanted to do it, especially to someone I love. I foolishly caved in after they told me how their boyfriends responded. My spouse didn't react the way I had anticipated when I did it last week. I had assumed that he would try to dissuade me or provide solutions, similar to what my friends' partners had done. But he didn't. I said to him, "I'm not happy anymore, but I think we should get a divorce," as we were eating supper and watching a movie. I swear that something cracked in his eyes as he gazed at me for a few seconds. He proceeded to our bedroom, and 10 minutes later, he emerged with a packed suitcase and left without a word. When I saw him packing his luggage, I made an effort to stop him, and I assured him that I didn't mean it and that it was only a joke. However, he dismissed me and left. I've attempted to contact him via video chats, emails, calls, and texts ever then, but he hasn't responded. Even though I spoke with his pals, none of them would give me his whereabouts. When they do reply, it's to express their desire to avoid involvement. I went to his place of employment, but they wouldn't let me in. His brothers and parents have also declined to become engaged. I received a mail from his sister. Joke or not, you made a huge mistake. I've emailed innumerable times to clarify that it was a joke, and I've even included screenshots of my chats with my pals as evidence. However, he has disregarded everything. My pals haven't been helpful. They simply tell me that he will move on, and that I should give him some time. When I received genuine divorce papers yesterday, everything fell apart. I was and still am in excruciating pain, like if someone had hit me in the face. I made a valiant attempt to contact him. However, all I received was a note stating that I should communicate with his lawyer since he had nothing to say. How do I win back the man I love? I'd rather not lose him. My world is falling apart. Because I know I made a foolish error. Edit. I've already had inquiries about this via direct messages. To be clear, I was not aware of any problems between us. All day long, we laughed and enjoyed one another's company. We hadn't been apart or fought recently. Everything seemed ideal. Here is the best advice. Telling your partner that you want to end your relationship or get a divorce is essentially what the joke is about. That isn't a joke. What the F you are being held accountable for your incredibly foolish action. In all honesty, it appears like your female pals are aware of your absurdly naivete and anticipated how this would backfire. They did it with their spouses, and none of them experienced anything similar. They claim that it truly increased their lover's devotion and attention for them. It wasn't a joke then. It was an instrument of manipulation. I noticed that. This was never a joke, let's face it. All you wanted to do was manipulate him with those words. No, I'd never want to be in charge of him. I understand your perspective, but I was only kidding. Are you 28 years old? Because I've never heard of a more infantile, nasty, or foolish trick. That you haven't been able to let him know you were kidding seems improbable. That's all you can do, anyhow. And if you believe that harming him would be enjoyable, he still wants to divorce you. Well, try your luck and see. I did explain that it was a joke to him. As evidence that it was a prank and that I wasn't going back, I even emailed a screenshot of my conversation with my buddies. However, he is not answering. Then, he most likely doesn't want to marry someone who would intentionally harm him for laughs. When he went to the room to gather his belongings, why didn't you follow him? I was unaware that he was packing. It wasn't that he was packing his belongings. I'm not sure what I thought. The next tale. I'm considering skipping my brother's wedding because of the practical joke his fiancée played on my hubby. My spouse is 30 years old, and I am 25. My brother, who is 32 years old, and his fiancée, who is 31 years old, recently visited our city. They were staying with us for the first time, because my boyfriend and I had bought a house. To put things in perspective, my brother's fiancée is a huge fan of Halloween, and sees herself as a Disney grown-up. She frequently becomes engrossed in her hobbies and has a childish side. Although she interprets it as a personal assault, I honestly believe that what happened was her getting carried away. My spouse ended their visit because of this argument. That is to say, they were asked to go. My brother's fiancée has been saying that my spouse has a sinister aura ever since they first met. She says it's a compliment when she compares him to characters in her works, but I'm not so sure anymore. His appearance, his overall attitude, and the fact that he has a hand tattoo are the basis for her remarks. She said during this visit that she couldn't imagine someone like him being frightened or shouting, and that she wanted to see him feel terrified. It was her intention to scare him while she was there. However, my brother and I were unaware of it. He attempted to jump frighten my husband in our dark garage, which led to all the issues. When he got home after a run, she was prepared to surprise him by hiding in a full costume and mask. Unaware of who it was, he pushed her aside out of impulse rather than yelling. She was obviously rattled up after hitting her head on the wall. Fortunately, he could see immediately by her response that it wasn't an intruder. He apologized, made her tea, called me, switched on the light, took off her mask, and assisted her inside. My brother and I were out together. I asked her if she was all right when we arrived home and told her that the prank was a horrible idea. It may have caused her great harm. In response, she sobbed and claimed that my husband had used excessive force and must have realized she was only doing a harmless practical joke. "Are you saying I intentionally assaulted you?" my husband inquired quietly. After hesitating, she answered yes, to which she retorted, "Leave my house." I made an effort to patch things up, but my husband was certain that she wasn't allowed to stay if she really thought he had intentionally damaged her. I sided with my spouse since she decided to stick by her claim. My brother is now upset and claims that I should have done more to defuse the situation, get my husband to issue an apology, and act as Kate's fiancé while she dealt with the fallout. He believes that if I had assisted my husband in resigning, this would have all been resolved. Considering that my brother didn't speak to his fiancée or attempt to reason with her throughout the conversation, I think this is unjust. Despite his composure, my husband was obviously offended by her comments, which I believe to be true. Given that I believe she went too far, and that she accused my brother's fiancée of intending to harm her, why should I have supported her over my husband? I was very short-sighted and should have thought about my brother's impending marriage. However, I believe that he ought to be the one to pressure his fiancée to express regret to my husband. None of this would have occurred if she hadn't concealed in the hooded costume in the dark garage. He couldn't have realized at the time that it was her, and I think anyone would have reacted similarly. She's fortunate, to be honest, that she wasn't worse injured than she was. This is a clear cause and effect situation, yet she refuses to take accountability. Her actions, in my opinion, fit the description of playing dumb games. It's disrespectful of them to attempt to hide her culpability, and your husband has nothing to answer for. No hole. That's exactly it. Entering a well-lit room from a closet is one thing, but jumping someone in a dark garage is quite another. She is fortunate that he did not shatter her jaw or nose. Oklahoma is where I call home. She is fortunate not to have been shot. This is Texas. The risk of being shot is real. That was really foolish of her. I promise that I won't be attacked once again. Not amusing. She appears unnecessarily obsessed with the OP's husband. Why was she playing a practical joke on him in the first place? Do they typically joke around with each other? I don't understand her reasoning, and this is just so strange. What specifically did she anticipate? Would he seize her right there, put her against a wall, and remove her mask? This isn't a book about gloomy romance. That's her brother-in-law. Jesus. I also don't comprehend. My spouse doesn't joke around with her. They don't get along very well. All of her perceptions of him are only surface level. She's never even met him. However, she's the kind of person who thinks she can read people extremely well and tells herself she knows who they are and what kind of person they are. In the past, she has attempted to predict things about him and has failed. Because she is assuming things about him. She undoubtedly does this with other persons she encounters. The next tale. My 24-year-old girlfriend wants to move in with me, but I don't want to after our vacation. How can I tell him? Despite being together for a year, our hectic schedules have only allowed us to spend 1 or 2 evenings together in a row. My partner wants me to move in with him as soon as possible. And I first promised him that I would give it some thought in a few months. But on a recent trip, I noticed a side of him that truly annoyed me. My partner frequently makes offensive remarks, particularly concerning looks. I hate to say it, but he has no right to criticize someone's appearance. I've never brought up the fact that he's very overweight since I don't give a damn. He began making jokes about my enormous arms. While I was preparing supper, likening myself to Popeye. I am strong and fit, and I already stress about appearing manly, so this really got to me. I felt so insecure that I started crying. Rather than offering me consolation, he left the hotel room, slammed the door, and stated, "I'll be downstairs when you're ready." We spoke again, and he expressed his anger at my distress, adding, "I can't take a joke. And I'm tired of having to listen to everything he says nearby." He ultimately committed to refraining from disparaging my appearance going forward. However, he observed, "Wow, your makeup was actually messed up today," when he was looking at pictures 2 hours later. He also acted in an unsettling manner on the journey home. He ordered a ton of food, made a mess all over the place, and wanted me to search in the overhead bin for his AirPods throughout a 5-hour trip. He looked away from me and rolled his eyes when I told him I didn't feel like waking up the person next to me simply to look for them. His response to the flight attendant was the last straw. He was occupied with posting selfies to Instagram, ignoring her as she gave explicit instructions to fasten seatbelts and put phones in airplane mode. "Why do you have to tick me off all the time? You're not my mother," he exploded when I begged him to do what she said. "I'll do whatever I want," I retorted in embarrassment. "Well, stop acting like a child," then he replied. "No, you are the child, you don't know anything at that point." I just closed my eyes and tried to sleep, holding back tears. About 10 minutes later, he tried to hold my hand and told me, "You know, I love you. I'll always love you. My heart belongs to you." Throughout the trip, everything seemed to be about what he wanted. One day, I suggested we do our own thing, and he agreed. We were apart for just 8 hours, but he called me several times, asking what I was doing. When we met up again, he told me he missed me and worried about me. For me, it was the complete opposite. Without him, I felt peace. Despite all of this, he's always kissing and cuddling me, telling me he loves me. When I got home after the trip, he said it was so sad to go home without me and wish us would live together. However, his behavior on this trip has completely turned me off from the idea of moving in with him. How do I tell him I don't want to move in right now? I know this will hurt him. But after seeing this side of him, I'm not sure living together is the right choice. Now, for the top comment. You should be breaking up with him. Not worried about how to tell him you don't want to live with him. Good thing she doesn't live with him. It will make breaking up with him so much easier. That's why he wants her to move in. He can't even mask his BS long enough to get his hooks in. He is that bad. Without him, I felt peace. You know what to do. He's affectionate, so you'll feel confused and give him the benefit of the doubt. And then he can keep being dreadful. Yep, this was the line for me. Op, bite the bullet and dump him. Do not move in with him. He is disrespectful and abusive. He wants everything on his terms. You know the relationship is over when you're happier if the other person is gone. Op, your life could be blissful. He gave you the ick. Going on holidays with a partner can either make or break the relationship. I think it's broken yours. If you move in with this guy, that will be your life. Disrespect and belittling you. He has shown you who he is. You know what his reaction will be already. He will get angry, storm off, gaslight, and love bomb you to try and get you to change your mind. I don't think you'll be able to just tell him, "I don't want to move in," without it ending the relationship. And to be honest, I don't see a future for you with this man-child. Thank you for your reply. Yes, I would characterize it as such. I really got the ick, he. He has previously informed me that I would likely experience severe depression and return to his native country if we ever broke up. To be honest, I think I'll start making plans to leave after reading these responses. The final tale. Am I a jerk for leaving my spouse to take a family vacation following his surgery? I'm looking for some outside opinions since my husband and I had a fight a month ago, and it's still creating a lot of problems in my household. I'm 32 years old, and I've been married to my 34-year-old spouse for 5 years. We were both excited to become parents when I became pregnant with our first kid 3 years ago. But I had a pretty difficult pregnancy. I was often tired and suffered from severe morning sickness. I spoke with my spouse my desire to remain at our house after delivering birth before my due date. I didn't want to go to my family's house for baby help, even though it's usual for new moms in my country. My connection with my father is difficult, and I wouldn't have felt at ease with my brother in such a vulnerable position. Even while I adore my family, something didn't feel quite right. As the baby's father, I believed it was my husband's duty to look after me as well as the child, and he agreed. Thus, we set up our home for visitors and got everything ready for the baby. His mother offered to assist, and my mother consented to remain with us. However, my husband took me to my family's home after I gave birth, stating that he believed it would be best for me to be close to my mother and sister, who were better able to take care of me than he was. He only came to see us 3 times in the month that we spent at my parents' place. I was ashamed and humiliated. While residing in my former bedroom, which I shared with my sister, I had to cope with breast leaks, sutures, and a wailing infant. My relatives made an effort to assist, but as a private individual, all I wanted was to return home and be with my spouse. Later, I learned that he had left for Dubai with his companions. A month ago, I took my husband to the hospital after he became unwell for 2 days, and his discomfort got worse. He was there for 2 days for an appendectomy. Although I stayed with him the entire time, I told him that his mother could take better care of him than I could, so when he was released, I took him to his parents' house rather than ours. After that, I picked up our child and traveled to another city to spend the summer with my family. My family was disappointed and said, "That's not how he raised you," when I informed them. When your spouse needs you the most, you don't leave him. It infuriated my in-laws. However, my sister went so far as to say that I ought to have left the infant with him. He returned 2 weeks after his operation, and I returned to our house a week later. He's been sleeping in the living room and giving me the quiet treatment ever since. Am I the a-hole, then? Not the jerk. What did he anticipate? He offered you nothing, and you gave him a taste of that. The fact that there were other plans made his conduct worse. It doesn't matter what other family members think.